Okay, this is a video about creating different charts, and for this part we're going to create a scatter plot. We've already discussed in class what a scatter plot is and when we should use it. So the main focus of this is to show how to actually create it in both Google Sheets and in Excel. So now in either one, and we'll do this again when we do Excel, but in either one we have to select the data that we want. In this case we're going to select two rows or two columns right next to one another. Later on you'll see how to select multiple rows when they're not next to one another. We'll do that for the bar chart. But in the Google Doc we're going to select the first two columns by clicking and holding and scrolling all the way down. We're not going to include the total. We don't want the total. We just want the individual data points in the two columns. So the two columns need to have the same number of entries, and in this case they do. So once we're done there, we release, and we notice that there's a blue box, and these are highlighted in blue around our data. Now we're ready to actually insert the chart. We can insert using the menu by clicking insert and then chart, or there's a shortcut here if we click on this button, insert chart. I'm going to do that right now. Now it pops up some recommendations, and you notice that there's no scatter plot in our recommendations. So that means I got to find where a scatter plot is by clicking on chart types, and then I'm going to scroll down until I see scatter plot, and here it is. So and it'll change automatically to a scatter plot over here. That's what I'm looking for. So then I'm going to click insert to insert that, and I can maybe scoot that over and make it larger so I can see it better. One thing about scatter plots is they're nice, but we should add a trend line here to show how is this data related to one another, positively or negatively is really what we're looking for. So we want to add a line in here. To add a line, we need to click on this little arrow here and click Advanced Edit. And this is the same editor window, so we could have done this ahead of time, but it's the same editor window that popped up when we created the chart in the first place. It's under the tab Customization. We're going to scroll down to the very bottom where it says Trend Line, and we're going to add a linear trend line by changing the drop down to linear. And our trend line shows up in here. It figured out what the trend line is supposed to be, and then we click update and we see it. And we can see this is a positive trend. As age increases, it seems that average ratings increase. One thing that we should do with all of our charts is to make sure that both axes start at 0. We should never start at anywhere but 0. So I'm going to change this vertical axis to 0, or to start at 0. So again, I'm going to click on the chart, click on Advanced Edit. We're going to go back into Customization, and we're going to find where it says Axis here, and we're going to change that to left vertical so that we can edit the left vertical axis, and we're just going to change the min here to 0. And when we exit out of that, it will change the axis so it starts at 0, and that kind of clumps our data closer together to where it looks a little bit more closer to that trend line. So then when we click update, we see the trend line here. We see all the data. We just have it starting at 0 and going up to 5, and that's fine. There's no big deal with that. In Excel, it's similar in creating a scatter plot. There's just some different things about Excel because of its design. So again, this is the same data set. We're just going to select the same two columns that we used in Google Sheets, and then we're going to click on the Insert tab, and there's a drop down here for Scatterplots, and we're going to select this first scatter plot. Now what's nice about Excel is it defaults to having a axis that starts at 0 and goes up to whatever value. So we don't have to fix that. We just have to add a trend line, which is really easy to do in Excel. If I click this green plus here, there's a bunch of options of chart elements that I can add. I just need to click the checkbox for the trend line. And then I can see there's a trend line there. I can make this bigger to see it a little bit better. And I can see my data points, I can see the trend line, and that's all there is to creating a scatter plot in either Excel or in Google Docs. This time around, we're going to add a bar chart for this data. It's the same data set we used for the scatter plot. We're just going to use a different column for the bar chart. So in this case, in Google Sheets and in Excel, it's kind of different. Either way, in order to select data, and this time we're selecting two columns of data that are not next to one another. So we're going to select this age column, and we're also going to select this average rating for women column. So in Google Sheets, I'm going to select the first column of data. And then I'm going to go back up, and I'm going to press the Control key and hold it while I click on the average rating for women column and make sure that I select all the same values, or all the same number of values, I should say. And they both turn blue and outline in a darker blue so that I know I've selected them. Now that I have them selected, I can insert the chart, which I can go, remember, to insert chart, or I can click this button up here. Initially, the chart wants to, or the Google Sheets wants me to do a specific type of chart. The reality is I want age to be my categories and average rating for women to be the values. So in order to do that, first of all, I'm going to use row 1 as the headers, which will tell us what the axis titles are going to be. But then I'm also going to use column A as the labels, which means it's going to represent each bar as a value for age categories. So each age category is going to have a bar that represents the average rating for women for that category. So, but our chart isn't quite what we wanted. This is more of a histogram, which is not what we're looking for in this case. We would rather have an actual column chart. So I'm going to scroll down and find column. And now when I click on column, now it changes to a column chart where each one of my bars represents one age level, one age value, and then the height of the bar represents the actual average age, or average rating for women for that age. So I'm going to click on insert to insert that chart. We're going to slide it over here, make it a little bit bigger, and then we're also going to play around with this. So once again, with this one, we have to change the axis to go to start at 0. The horizontal axis doesn't matter because it's actually representing different categories. So these, even though this is numbers, this isn't really, we're not really treating it as numbers or numerical data. It's categories of the data that we're looking at. So we don't need to worry about this axis. We only need to worry about the vertical axis. Just like we did for Scatterplots, we click on the little drop down here, click Advanced Edit, and we scroll down until we find Axis, and we change the drop down to left vertical, change the minimum to 0, click out to see what it looks like, and then click Update. So now it gives us a better idea as to how high these bars really are and what they represent and how we can compare them over time or over the different categories of ages. Okay. In Excel, similarly, it's more difficult, but it's also very different. So in this case, instead of selecting my age column, which I will eventually, I'm going to actually select the average rating for women first, because this is the data I want represented as the bars in the bar chart. So I'm going to select that and insert a bar chart, which is really they call it a column chart. We're going to click on 2D column and click this first one. And now our bar chart looks more like the one that we created in Google Sheets. The difference is it gives these random, well, not random, they're just ordered numbers based on the row. As the row values over here have values, have numbers. So it's just basing it on the row numbers. We want to show actually the age values, which don't correspond to the row numbers. To do that, we need to change this axis down here to show the proper labels. So to do that, we're going to go up here. We're making sure we're in the Design tab of the Chart Tools, and we're going to click Select Data. And it shows the only data we've selected so far, which is the average rating for women. That's the actual legend or the series that we want. For the horizontal axis labels, though, we want to edit these, and we're going to actually use data from here. So we can select the range that we want, which in this case we want the age, but we don't want to include the label for age. We're just going to include the age, in this case values. So from 7 down to 73. Once I have those, I click OK, and now it shows these are my category labels. So then when I click OK, back here it shows the category labels down here. Okay, and if I spread this a little further, you can see a little bit better the chart. Okay, and again, because of what Excel does, it defaults to having 0 as the value for the vertical axis, so, or the minimum value for the vertical axis, so I don't need to do anything else with this bar chart. It's ready to be viewed by